I can't stop thinking about the CGI Astro Boy movie, and I don't know why. It's not an exceptional movie, by any measure, not particularly good or bad as a standalone film or adaptation. Its animation, while a bit shaky by modern standards, isn't really worth talking about in the context of the time it came out, 2009. Its writing is fine. Its star-studded cast does just okay. Honestly, the most notable thing about this movie is the fact that it bombed at the box office, making only $39 million to its $65 million budget. And ironically, the fact that this is probably the first time you've ever even heard of it. It's a true nothing burger of a movie. But despite all that, I kinda can't stop thinking about it. I have watched it possibly a dozen times at this point. Like, I will just be randomly hit with the urge to pop it in the old DVD player at least a few times a year. Example. About 2 years ago, nearly to the day, I went on a semester abroad to Hiroshima, looking to snag the last of my language credits and maybe even graduate with my English linguistic bachelor's a little early in the process. It was maybe one of the hardest things I'd ever done, like not just in how difficult the accelerated classes were, but also in how deeply overstimulated I found myself by the end of it. Weekdays were filled with studying, weekends were spent on class field trips touring the country, and yes, we had an amazing time. I would do it all 1,000 times over again if given the opportunity. Obviously. But I am also the kind of person who needs actual quiet time to fully recharge my batteries. And I had maybe about 30 minutes of that a week with our schedule. Naturally, I got sick, and sometimes in the midst of me playing catch-up, I found myself just needing some time to myself for even just 2 hours. So, I sat down in the common area with my iPad and noise-canceling headphones, and I turned on the Astro Boy movie. It's dumb, it's fun, it's full of clumsy metaphors about class-based discrimination, and I am somewhat ashamed to admit that I like it a great deal. Why I like it is an easy enough question to answer. It's a 6 out of 10 that happens to appeal to me personally. The best kind of film for a turn your brain off stress-induced movie night. It has themes that I see genuine potential in, and is obscure enough that knowing of it feels like being in on a little secret, but why am I obsessed with it? Why have I watched it upwards of 20 times? Well, the true answer to that is between me and my psychiatrist, but maybe, if I info dump about it enough, I can infect some of you with my brainworms and then be able to prove to my mom that it's not that weird. We should probably talk about Astro Boy. Wait, you have seen an Astro Boy show, right? Read the manga? Have you at least heard of him? Oh boy. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of the slightly older weebs in my audience raising their hands, but the rest of you? Huh. We might have a bit of work to do. A bit of foundation to lay. Astro Boy, aka Tetsuwan Atom, often translated to the Mighty Atom or Iron Arm Atom, is maybe one of the most important pieces of art to come out of Japan ever. And here in the West, it's at best a bit of interesting trivia amongst super nerds. Did you know that Tetsuwan Atom, released in 1963, was the first anime ever? I mean, it's not, by multiple metrics, but people say that sometimes. Studios like Toei, the guys who make One Piece and Dragon Ball nowadays, actually predate Tetsuwan Atom by over 10 years. And Japan has been doing film animation in some capacity since the 1910s. The first animated television series to come out of Japan is probably Instant History, aka Otogi Manga Calendar from 1961. But like a lot of the black and white era over here, there's enough lost media from this time and earlier in Japanese animation history that even this claim is hard to verify. And before you ask, it's not the first manga either. It's not even this author's first manga. Tetsuwan Atom is verifiably, however, the most important anime from this era by a long shot. It was popular in a way that no anime had been before, and it established a multitude of genre conventions, some of which are recognizable to this day, being a, for the time, modern-feeling, exciting sci-fi romp with monsters of the week and a young-looking protagonist that the young viewers could see themselves in. It almost reminds you of... That young protagonist, by the way, is Atom, often westernized to Astro. We'll get to why later. For clarity's sake, if the version I'm talking about is Japanese, I'll be referring to him as Atom. If it's American, he's Astro. Glad we cleared that up. Anyway, whoever he is, he's a robot, an android to be specific, since he's so human-looking. He lives in Japan in the far future year of 2003, a time where cars fly and robots are so common they make up a significant portion of the population. This has caused no small amount of tension, domestically and internationally. Tensions that at times can come to a head with robots' arm races, controversial elections, mass protests, and more. Yeah, in case you didn't know, Tetsuwan Atom is political. Like, genuinely. Reminder that this was published in the height of the civil rights movement in America, as well as the Japanese workers' Anpo protests in 1959, and later the primarily leftist and communist university protests of 1968. It even seems to portray the Anpo protests directly at some point, albeit negatively, though I'm no Japanese historian, so take my interpretation with a grain of salt. And also, reportedly, the writer wasn't the biggest fan of the university protests, but was something of a communist, at least for a little while. The writer's politics are its own can of worms, and English resources for these politics are limited, so let's leave that right there for now. Atom's personal story is, at the very least, easier to speak on. When not centering around whatever guy he has to punch this week, the narrative is primarily about empathy. Atom is a robot that looks very human, who unlike his main inspiration Pinocchio, has no problem with morality or being a real boy, however the narrative chooses to define that. The tension lies in the fact that not everyone treats him that way. Not even his own father. See, Atom was made by Dr. Umataro Tenma, a brilliant, if somewhat mad scientist who tragically lost his son Tobio in an accident. In his grief, he goes a bit mad, and decides to make a replacement Tobio, one that looks just like him and also just so happens to be the most advanced robot on the planet, both in sheer processing power and his ability to be as human-like as possible, as well as all his cool guns, rockets, state-of-the-art nuclear core, and other such cool shit. Yeah, if it's not obvious, Geppetto he is not. Though, funny enough, Guillermo del Toro, who loves Astro Boy, very clearly took inspiration from this dynamic when writing his version of Pinocchio. It comes full circle. Tenma is closer to Frankenstein, really. Dr. Frankenstein, if that wasn't clear, rather than his son, Adam Frankenstein. Adam? That's probably not a coincidence. However, Tenma's parenting style would give even Dr. Frankenstein some pause, as after the post making a robot in a grief-filled mania clarity hits, he finds himself horrified at what he has done and enraged that this robot will never be his precious departed son. So, he sells Atom to the circus. He sells a robot that is only a few months old, that looks just like his son and is programmed to love him into slavery. Father of the Year. A lot of Tetsuwan Atom's villains are Tenmas in their own right, bad humans exploiting robots for their own personal gain. Not always by just literally selling them for money, but yes, sometimes just that. It's generally human greed and human ambition that results in Atom having to punch some poor enslaved robot in the face. Sometimes, but not always, redeeming them in the process. The humans in the equation also get punched in the face and occasionally redeemed, but that's usually left to the grandfatherly Dr. Ochanomizu, sometimes Americanized to Dr. Elephant. The original Tetsuwan Atom has a pretty decent supporting cast, but many of them don't make it into future adaptations, or if they do, it's in a reduced capacity at best. Atom's teacher, Hige Oyachi, a nickname often translated to Mr. Mustachio, and which literally means mustache older man, fulfills a kind of fatherly role for Atom, while also fulfilling the series' slapstick quota. And he's almost always omitted if the goal is a more serious adaptation. Atom also has a whole robot family created so he could live something of a normal life, including a robot father, mother, brother, and sister. The sister, Uran, must have been pretty popular because she's almost always the only one that makes it past the cut. Dr. Ochanomizu, an old friend of Tenma's and the man who rescued Atom from circus slavery, is the one that always makes it in, and for good reason. He can be fatherly, he can be funny, and it kind of makes more sense structurally if he's the one to adopt Atom once Tenma goes out for cigarettes. So, that's basically your Tetsuwan Atom primer, based mostly on the manga, and yeah, even to my surprise, it's kind of a lot. Especially for something that looks like Betty Boop. It's so much that even if you understand where it's coming from, it's hard to deny that it has something of a tone problem, at least by modern standards. I mean, political drama, existential horror, sci-fi action, Looney Tunes-esque slapstick, a lot is putting it mildly. But, okay, criticizing Tetsuwan Atom kind of feels like bad-mouthing your grandpa. Like, yeah, he can be a little weird and old-fashioned sometimes, a little racist too if I'm being honest, but he's also basically why you're here? And even when he misses, you can't help but look up to the guy. Actually, now's as good a time as any to talk about Grandpa. The original Tetsuwan Atom manga was created by Osamu Tezuka in 1952, And like all great auteurs, he kind of just threw everything he liked into a blender, hit on, and didn't look back. Early Mickey Mouse cartoons? Throw them in. Western literature? Why not? Tokusatsu-style action? Absolutely. He also, and this is what makes criticizing the series a bit uncomfy, especially as an American, based a lot of the darker themes on his own experiences living through World War II as a young man. He cites in particular his experiences with violence and discrimination as key inspirations. Question: what do Godzilla and Atom have in common? Well, both are basically sympathetic stand-ins for the nuclear bomb, made by Japanese people simply trying to process the yet unprecedented violence through progress that was committed on their land, during a time where more overt discussions were being highly censored by the American government. Yeah, anime isn't political, crowd. Eat your hearts out. Now, as genuinely interesting as I find all that, it probably wasn't the best move to undercut those themes with Betty Boop gags. There are a lot of very influential manga and anime clearly inspired by whatever parts of Tetsuwan Atom that particular artist thought worked, but very few choose to copy that exact aspect of the writing. Now, this manga is, well, it's interesting, it's worth your time, but I don't actually know that I'd describe it as good. As someone who cares about this medium, I am glad I read it, but I severely doubt I would do so for pleasure. Honestly, the main descriptor that comes to my mind is frustrating. It's frustrating to see a work that politically is trying to say something about the rights of people formerly considered property by the general populace, that then turns around and has a story featuring an African robot that believes Uran to be the Messiah, enslaves humans, and looks like this. I'm not even sure what he was trying to do here. It's not even Sambo lips anymore. This is just shoe polish blackface, and like bad shoe polish blackface. Why the fuck did you miss your nose? I'm not even sure if I'm offended by it, just baffled, I think. I do not have the tools to unpack the cognitive dissonance on display here. Like, seriously, I am not Japanese. I am not a Japanese historian. I am not the person to dig through his opinions on communism and the Vietnam War and American civil rights and various Japanese protests, and I'm unsure how useful such analysis would even be, at least for my purposes. If you want to make that video, go for it. I'm more concerned with how honestly boring a lot of this manga was. Having read through other works of his like Blackjack and Dororo, how I found this to be a real slog past volume 3 or so. It's not his best work, and I think he'd agree with me on that. Tetsuwan Atom was, very notably, his first work to hit it big. The one that had him quitting his day job as a medical doctor. Fun fact, he apparently never practiced medicine, having gotten his doctorate and basically quitting on the spot because Atom was doing that well. He ended up being very prolific, and while Tetsuwan Atom would be his most iconic work, it's rarely considered his best by fans. It's the fact that he went on to add extensive manga-style forewords to each chapter, as well as redrawing certain panels and pages entirely, that leads me to believe that he may agree with them. Relatable, honestly. So, yeah, a lukewarm recommendation is the best I can do for ya. Sorry about that. It probably doesn't help that even if you do want to read it legally, that is, your options are less than ideal, let's say. Preposterous, you may think. A manga as important as Tetsuwan Atom must have loads of different editions, been reprinted dozens of times over the last nearly 80 years. Ooh, maybe they even sell those nice leather-bound volumes, the ones that YouTubers put in their shelves as a flex. No. No. Here's a not-so-fun fact. Tetsuwan Atom wasn't translated officially into English until 2002. This is despite how well the Astro Boy cartoon did in the US. We'll get to why later. If you're an older weeb and happen to remember reading something that you thought was the Tetsuwan Atom manga before that time, chances are you were either reading a bootleg or you were reading one of 2 American-made Astro Boy comics, the ones based entirely around the American Astro Boy localization. Yeah, apparently one of them was made illegally, and this was back in the day where you had to physically print and distribute comics. I almost respect it. The first time Tetsuwan Atom would legally grace our gaijin eyes would be through Dark Horse Comics again in 2002. And from what I understand, every currently available legal copy is a reprint of that version. The youngins in the audience may assume that's no big deal. The old heads probably just groaned in disappointment. It probably goes without saying that the way we consume anime and manga here in the West has changed pretty rapidly over the last few years. In terms of anime, physical media is more or less considered vintage now, something that even I have a hard time adjusting to. In terms of manga, accessibility has way shot up over the last 15 or so years. Your local bookshop, no matter where you live, likely has a huge manga section. Hell, you can find manga at Target. Do you know how weird that would have been like 10 years ago? Ebooks, webcomics, and certain manga distributors, even making subscription services, serve as their own innovations. But at the end of the day, the tankobon remains supreme. And so supreme that grifters like Jake Paul are trying to make pump and dump schemes using them, but those losers don't deserve the air from my lungs. Because at the end of the day, there's not much you can do to improve upon a book. Except there were actually improvements made to these books. Well, one very important change was made. In April 2002, Tokyopop became the first English manga distributor to print their books in the original right-to-left format, and they revolutionized the industry here in the West in the process, making it industry standard from then out, basically. Before then, manga was almost always published flipped over here in America, which is unfortunate because, as any artist can tell you, composition, the way you arrange your image on the page, is king. You destroy something in the artist's intent by flipping the image. It's part of why I actually really don't like that I typically have to flip clips I use here on YouTube to avoid frivolous copyright claims. I know full well that I'm within my rights, and I want to talk about and show off visuals of whatever movie or show topic I've chosen in all their glory, so it's kind of sad I don't get to do that, really. Well, Tokyopop must have realized they didn't have that restriction, and putting a bit of faith into English readers' abilities to adjust, they made a gamble that paid off in a big way. Dark Horse's Astro Boy Volume 1 came out in March of 2002. Damn. Missed it by a month. Okay, history lesson over. The Astro Boy manga was published here left to right, and it continues to be published like that to this day. There have been, as far as I can tell, no attempts to retranslate or even just reformat this version to comply more to modern standards. If they are so much as considering it, that would be news to me. The only way their version has changed over the years has been a shift from single volume tankobons to the collected omnibus editions that have around 3 volumes each. As far as I can tell, the former only exists either used, with availability being spotty, or as an ebook, but like only on Nook for some fucking reason. The latter is, time of recording, available brand new most places you can get books, and used for decently reasonable prices, though going that route may result in a smaller discount than you would like. I purchased a lovely copy of Omnibus 1 at my local chain bookstore, and oops, I gotta disappoint you one more time. Let's say you can get past the left to right format. Let's say you can see past the fact that despite this being billed as the true Tetsuwan Atom, they still call the robot boy Astro. Let's say you have, Jesus Christ, nearly $25 to drop on this book. That's $175 for the whole set, by the way. What you're getting for that money is just a bit shit. Indulge me while I pretend to be a book talk. For a hot sec. I don't watch book talk. This is the first Astro Boy omnibus, and at first blush, it's not so bad. The printing is decent quality. The cover is kind of cute, if a bit bare bones. This is maybe not worth $25, but you can get it for cheaper if you're willing to dig a bit. Really, the devil is in the details, and as someone who owns a lot of books and a lot of manga, as well as someone with some graphic design experience, there are a lot of devils in these details. First detail, it's not in publishing order. Now, eagle-eared viewers may have heard me say that the Dark Horse version was a direct translation of a Japanese 1989 edition, and that holds true. It was the Japanese publishers and Tezuka himself that chose the chapter order. That being said, I'm genuinely not sure why they ordered it the way they did. What little continuity the series had kind of falls apart, but since this decision falls squarely into artist intent, it's unfair to judge Dark Horse for this. First genuine criticism, aside from the flipping, is just how small this edition is. It's a good few inches shorter than everything else on my shelf. I suspect that it's close to the original Japanese publishing size. Yes, we here in America size up manga. We can do this because the originals are typically drawn on big illustration board. Turns out everything in the States is bigger, even our Japanese comics. I wasn't able to get a copy of the original volume 1 in time, so I can't say for certain if this is a downsized version or not. The product dimensions on Dark Horse's website point towards yes, but only minorly. According to these measurements, the original volume 1 would have been smaller than your average modern English tankobon by half an inch, and this edition is yet another half inch smaller than that. A lot of 3-in-1 editions tend to be made on the cheap, even using cheaper paperback paper rather than the thicker, whiter paper that tends to go in tankobons. They are supposed to be budget options after all, but I must admit they've never been my favorite just for that reason. Fine to buy for some cheap entertainment, but let's be real, you're going to get rid of this eventually. They are not shelf pieces, and that's okay, they fulfill a purpose. But even compared to those 3-in-1s, this was made for pretty damn cheap, and it's kind of shooting itself in the foot with its cheapness. My nearsighted ass did not the tiny text on low contrast paper. I got a headache after like a chapter, being forced to switch to the ebook, and doing that made the flaws in this version all the more apparent. Example, there is a translator's note at the beginning that was honestly really helpful for establishing a few key facts, from details about Tezuka's life to information about the hows and whys of the edition, like where the chapter order came from. But the formatting of it here is pretty poor. The margins are non-existent. Zero respect was given to formatting when making this thing. Either they just didn't give a shit from the start. Well, no, that's not really up for debate, I guess. Or they realized their error in making the pages so damn small. It must have dawned on someone that the text would be microscopic if they shrunk it down the same way they had the other pages, but rather than making the forward an extra page longer, they just chopped off the margins, which is just so profoundly amateurish. The cover, the font choice, all other peripheral elements are honestly serviceable, but it's worth giving a point of comparison. This edition of Junji Ito's Uzumaki is one of the nicest manga volumes I own. Now, comparing pricing is more or less pointless because inflation is just so much fun, but right now on Amazon, you can get this for only $2 more than this. Now, what do those few dollars get you? They get you a beautiful hardcover edition with nice white crisp pages, gorgeous color inserts, a combination of glossy and matte finish that causes a wonderful effect, one that sadly probably won't show up on camera very well. Those $2 more get you a lot. They get you something that you will want to keep forever. And before you ask, this was printed in 2013, where the Astro Boy omnibuses started printing in 2016. They had literally no excuse by this point. Now, the Junji Ito deluxe editions must be doing well because they won't stop reprinting them, and they've released just about all of his manga this way in the West. My question then is, what's stopping them from doing that with Tetsuwan Atom? Especially since other Tezuka works like Blackjack and Dororo have gotten better treatments. Well, here's where we arrive at a bit of a catch-22. Junji Ito is more popular here in the West than Osamu Tezuka, and that's a non-controversial statement. It's a provable one, in fact, if you're willing to believe my anime list statistics. Pretty much nothing of Tezuka's manga or anime adaptation cracks the top 100 in popularity, where the Uzumaki manga sits at a cool number 31. Now, is he more popular because Uzumaki has been printed way more, or has Uzumaki been printed more because he is more popular? That question is pretty difficult to answer. However, and this is with all due respect to Ito, I adore him and his work, there is not an Ito manga museum in Osaka. There aren't multiple Uzumaki statues across Japan. At some point, you gotta admit that maybe, just maybe, Tetsuwan Atom was mishandled here in the West. And not all of that blame lies on Dark Horse's shoulders, considering how relatively late they came into this conversation. Ball's still in their court right now though, at least as far as the manga is concerned. And in my unprofessional opinion, I think they have a responsibility to the culture to do better, to not just make it more accessible, but to make it genuinely beautiful. Then again, companies rarely do what is moral and good and beautiful, now do they? Even companies that are supposedly in the business of making art. So, you know, archive.org exists and its legal status as a library persists, so do with that what you will. Hello there. Had to take off your collar because you're jingling too much. Okay. And Dark Horse, if you're listening, and I doubt you are, please publish some new editions, right to left. Call it Tetsuwan Atom or the Mighty Atom if you must, and make it something that I at least wouldn't hate to have on my shelf. Something that at least meets modern standards of manga sold here in the West. If it is even halfway decent, I will tell literally everyone I know. Heck, I will post the review right on this channel. And if this is beyond you, please, for the love of God, sell the distribution rights. But don't think for a second I don't have some sympathy for you. I know that you only called it Astro Boy because that was just what it was known as in the West. Whatever damage you have done to Tetsuwan Atom's reputation and popularity here, the anime localizations did tenfold, years before you ever even purchased the license. Yeah, we should talk about the anime. Huh. That's anime, plural, by the way. There were 3, not including the spin-offs, movies, and that weird tokusatsu show that's like halfway to being lost media. There's the 1963 TV series, which I know a little about, the 1980 series, which I know next to nothing about, and the 2003 series, which I have actually seen and like quite a lot. The original 1963 show was produced by Tezuka himself, control freak that he was. Back when anime was just barely establishing itself as a medium, he opened his own studio, Mushi Productions. I'm gonna learn you a little bit of kanji here. Osamu Tezuka, or in the Japanese order Tezuka Osamu, is actually spelled like this, but he used this as his pen name. Same pronunciation. There are lots of homophones in Japanese, but that last character here is the character for bug, pronounced mushi. He was a big fan of them, apparently. I have nothing else to say on the matter, I just think that's cute. You more or less know the story at this point. It was super popular, established some genre conventions, no need to rehash all that. Within the same year, he was approached by American studio NBC. They would air their Astro Boy show for 104 episodes, significantly shorter than the 193 episode Japanese run, but just long enough for syndication. Yeah, once they got the amount of episodes they needed, they cut off the agreement and went their separate ways. They also weren't terribly shy about not airing episodes that they thought weren't suitable for American children. Unsurprisingly, Tezuka didn't care for them. The execs, not the children. If there is one reason to check out the manga, it's Tezuka's forwards, particularly the ones where he gets on his damn soapbox and reads us Americans, especially those TV executives, to filth. Tezuka was an opinionated guy, with lots to say on everything from fantasy violence to the very real and at the time ongoing Vietnam War. Honestly, get our asses, Grandpa. That being said, sometimes they had a point. The first chapter in the manga in the 1989/Dark Horse collection, the one that comes right after the prologue, is a story called The Hot Dog Corps. All the warnings for animal cruelty, by the way. If stories like that give you the ick, please utilize the timestamps and skip right ahead. This is a story about the teacher character, Hige Oyaji, and his dog, Pero. Now, he loves this dog, raised it since it was a puppy, and openly says that he treats it like family. So he's of course heartbroken when Pero gets dog-napped by a mysterious lady. He and his students, including Atom, search for Pero, but fear that it may be dead. It's not. Instead, Pero has been cybernetically modified into a human soldier that obeys every command, and he spends nearly the entire story in mental and physical anguish, experiencing what can only be described as severe body dysphoria. He has been twisted into a form beyond his comprehension. He longs for something he does not remember, something he does not know how to ask for. All he knows is that he is wrong, and that he is suffering. Before you combust, no, he doesn't die, and yes, he gets to be a dog and go live with his dad again. It's a happy ending, I promise. But like, no shit, Tezuka. Of course they wouldn't want to air that. Are you kidding me? Even by modern standards, that's a bit fucking much. Can you imagine watching Transformers and then randomly halfway through the Nina Tucker episode from Full Metal Alchemist gets thrown in? In the chapter insert, Tezuka calls the NBC execs hypocrites, saying that Americans are guilty of plenty of animal cruelty, and this is true. No one really wants to know how the hot dog is made, after all. As traumatizing as I imagine this episode would be for a young child, he does have some kind of a point. Lots of little changes were made to the Astro Boy anime localization in order to make it more palatable to a TV executive's ideas of young American audiences. I hate calling it a 4Kids dub, because if anything, 4Kids got their practices from shows like this, but that really is the best modern comparison. Plenty of content scrubbed to make it a bit more child-friendly. Plenty of people and place names changed to make it more American. These changes would drastically affect the way Western audiences saw this property. Plenty claiming to not have even known it was Japanese until later in life. All three anime would get this treatment, and like the manga, there have been no attempts to retranslate it since. There's no Funimation One Piece dub to save us. Your choices are 4Kids dub or nothing, baby. Or fan subs, but for legal reasons, I can't endorse piracy. I, like a lot of adults who still watch cartoons for babies, have a bit of a problem with the American rating system and its idea of what is suitable for children. For one, its origins are deeply racist and homophobic. If you don't know what the Hays Code is, do yourself a favor and look it up on your own time. We got places to be today. You can, to this day, get away with a lot more on Japanese kids' TV than you can American. It's a part of why when anime gets imported nowadays with all the original content intact, it tends to be marketed to teenagers. Like, One Piece over here has a TV-14 rating, meaning suitable for kids 14 and older, while in Japan, goddamn grade schoolers read it. I'd know. In that Hiroshima semester, we had a day where we helped out at the local elementary school, and at lunch, a 9-year-old girl complimented my One Piece folder before gushing about her favorite character, Luffy. Cute as hell interaction, by the way, absolutely no complaints, but I can't lie, it was a bit embarrassing. Attitudes here are loosening, somewhat. The Marvel movies were the biggest things ever over here, being especially popular with children, and those things were almost entirely PG-13 films. And I know plenty of older weebs who show One Piece to their young kids, making 9-year-old One Piece fans less of a novelty than what it used to be over here. The meaning behind these ratings seems to be degrading, and that's absolutely for the best. On the other hand, puritanical attitudes seem to be on the rise. Books are getting banned from schools out of parents' supposed worries of corrupting the youths. Even the squeakiest, cleanest gay representation you can think of can get a show cancelled. And most importantly, self-righteous teenagers won't stop bothering me about how Vivzy Pop swears too much. Gonna say it again for the people in the back. Swearing doesn't make you cool, but moralizing it makes you a fucking narc. God, that tangent went on for a while. Where even were we? Well, if you want to watch the anime, all 3 of them, legally here in the West, your options are limited. You can either deal with the 4Kids dub or go sailing. Except, wouldn't you know, even getting your hands on these subpar dubs is a hassle. Secondhand DVDs are the most reliable way by far. Streaming for these ranges from spotty to non-existent. 1963, no luck. 1980, a bit more luck. Looks like that's on YouTube with ads in Prime, I think. 2003, no luck. And that last one is especially tragic because, again, I like that one. It's genuinely really good, and for my money, the fan sub is by far the best place to start if you want to get into Tetsuwan Atom. Its interpretation of the lore is one that a lot of important future adaptations would default to. The removal of the robot family save Uran, putting Dr. Ochanomizu in the role of caretaker, and putting extra focus on Atom's ability to empathize with other robots, even and especially the ones that for one reason or another are too alien for us humans to be able to understand right off the bat. It's the one that made me understand Tezuka's goal of fostering empathy amongst all kinds of people, even in the case of beings that seem completely foreign to us. They can be understood, and they can partake in our wonderful world as good members of society, so long as we allow room for them. Basically, integration is for dweebs. It's our job as a society to make room for people that may seem alien to us, not for those people to twist themselves into whatever shape we decide they need to fit into a certain preset mold. Anime isn't political, crowd. Eat your hearts out. It's a shame then that this story remains largely inaccessible. Hey, it's that time of the video again. If you've been enjoying my insane ramblings thus far, now's a good time to leave a like and consider subbing, something that's completely free to do and that helps a lot more than you think. I am dangerously close to 1K subs, the threshold for being a real YouTuber. If you got that far-off luxury known as disposable income, throwing me a few bucks through Ko-fi goes a long way. I also offer commissions there if you want me to work for it a little more. YouTube members and patrons get interesting perks like seeing videos a full day early, among other benefits. I stream weekly here and on Twitch. My current favorite series that we're doing is the Marvel Mondays streams, in which me and a few of my friends aim to eventually complete the Marvel Universe, and not just the MCU. Other streams like our Percy Jackson book club and our more laid-back Kingdom Hearts playthroughs are also a lot of fun though. Special thanks to members Breadfast Cereal 8201 and The Power of Luck. And, if you made it this far, comment your favorite fictional robot. There are no wrong answers. Mine is unironically Zane from Ninjago. Do that, and I'll be sure to pop down and thank you personally. With that, let's get back to the video. I bet you forgot the movie's what started this whole discussion. The power of video essayist tangents, I suppose. Excuse me while I use another video essayist secret technique and begin this section off with an anecdote. The Astro Boy movie came out in 2009, when I was 9, so no, I didn't actually watch it on release. I got introduced to the film around my late teens, when the anime part of my amygdala was beginning to take control and the otaku metamorphosis was well underway. Believing incorrectly that Astro Boy was the first anime ever, I wanted to prove my street cred and try and get into it. For all of these reasons, there's not really a simple answer to the question of where to start when getting into Astro Boy. And again, unless you're willing to dive headfirst into piracy, your options are very limited. Now and please don't tell me about this, but not for a show that looked like this. I was at an age where I thought free Iwatobi Swim Club was the height of cinema. The black and white Tetsuwan Atom didn't really appeal to me. I'd like to say that I did some research, compared a few shows, and checked out the manga a little. I would love to sit here on my throne and pretend to be the good nerd that actually looked shit up as a kid, but I would be sitting on a throne of lies. I came across this movie through AO3. I was reading Ben 10 fanfiction and decided to troll through the author's other works when I found they had a few for a 2009 Astro Boy movie, a film I had never even heard of. By the way, if you recognize the writer on that description alone, good for you. Discuss in the comments. I'm not going to name them because some of y'all can't behave. I look up the trailer for this movie and yeah, I'm not impressed. It is very difficult to articulate just how dog shit this trailer is. If you are someone who cares a bit about animation, even kids animation, this trailer will have you rolling your eyes until they fall out of your skull. Star-studded cast, way overemphasized in the marketing, yes, but what really stuck out to me at the time was the everything else. I mean, look at this thing. Look at his animation. Look at this moment. Machine guns in Astro's butt? As if Tezuka would ever write that. And come on, its Rotten Tomatoes score sits at a paltry 51%. It bankrupted the studio that made it. But, and the AO3 girlies in the comments will agree with me here, there is some power in an AO3 recommendation, especially when coming from a decent author. Their own writing quality, combined with the fact that they seem to like it well enough, is the best endorsement a D-list property can ask for sometimes. Plus, there's an element of FOMO to it, yes? You want to read all these lovely works. You want to be in on, well, maybe not the trend in this case, but in on something. Well, gotta read the source material first. And that this source material was an adaptation of something I'd been meaning to check out for a while was certainly a bonus. Even if it was subpar, I would at least be closer to understanding what this story was all about, and if it was bad, that could be a fun time all on its own. I had literally nothing to lose aside from the few dollars it took to rent the thing. I decided to give it a whirl. It was a digital rental? I don't know why I did this. And maybe my expectations were just rock fucking bottom, but I didn't think it was that bad. As a standalone movie, it's pretty enjoyable, if painfully on the nose sometimes, but in retrospect, that may make it more faithful to the source material, not less. Temper your expectations, keep in mind that it's more or less doing its own thing, same as any Atom adaptation, and this is not a bad choice for baby's first Astro Boy cartoon. Especially since, last I checked, this one was available for free with ads on Tubi, so it's for sure winning the award of most accessible Tetsuwan Atom thing by a long shot. On that note, spoilers ahead, so if you're curious, now's the time to give it a go. I personally don't think this is the kind of movie where spoilers matter all that much, but according to my friends, they have to basically be on high alert around me 24/7 in case I drop casual spoilers for whatever I was watching that week. So I may be the wrong person to make that judgment. Watch it if you want, skip it and stick with the video if you don't, I'm not your mom. So, this movie is pretty mediocre. I quite enjoy talking about things that are mediocre so long as that mediocrity isn't boring. You can learn a lot, good and bad, from a mediocre film, and I think the Astro Boy movie is a pretty good example of this. It makes a lot of interesting little changes that I actually really appreciate. For example, the story opens not with the creation of Astro, nor with the death of, in this movie they're calling him Toby, a slight Americanization of Tobio, and honestly, I'll take it. It starts with a day in the life of Toby. He's played by Freddie, good Dr. Highmore, who does a pretty decent job with his roles as both Toby and Astro.
Dad, I can fly. I can drill my way through solid rock. It's amazing.
From what I can tell, he's one of the few actors in this, again, kind of embarrassingly star-studded cast that actually has multiple voice acting credits to their name, so that at least tracks. The movie is structured very similarly to a superhero film, putting you into a false sense of security as it takes the time to introduce you to who you expect will be the hero of this film. Important to these ends, Toby is an actual character. He's a bit of a boy genius, doing very well in school, but he's also clever in ways that you don't expect. Hacking his dad's butler bot in order to go somewhere he's not supposed to, and stealing a keycard from a guard to also go somewhere he's not supposed to. He also has some kind of unexpected tension with his father, being largely neglected by Dr. Tenma while he focuses on his career. Typical kid movie plot stuff, but more humanizing than what he gets in just about every other adaptation. So not only is it incredibly tragic from a human standpoint to see him die, it's also structurally doing something really interesting, using the bones of a superhero story to do a bit of a rug pull. I've seen people who know the story of Astro Boy still be surprised when they get to this moment. The emotional arc of this film, while built on one too many cliches, in my opinion, is well considered and well structured. We meet Toby, son of Dr. Tenma, and get attached to the kid. That kid dies, and we, like Dr. Tenma, lose our connection to this world. Tenma's loss and his struggle to piece himself back together after the fact, his failed attempt to do the same for Toby, becomes central. He is a Dr. Frankenstein that has to admit that no, he can't bring the dead back to life. There are a few wrenches in this, however, and I'm not just talking about painfully Republican President Stone, nor the Wall-E-style ecological disaster facing the Earth. As well structured as this emotional arc is, there are a lot of elements working against it. Nicolas Cage's acting, for one. You'd think he'd be absolutely perfect for this somewhat insane Dr. Tenma, but not only does he sound like he's half asleep.
I'm sorry, Toby, but it's unavoidable. President Stone has brought forward the unveiling of the Peacekeeper.
Even if he did give more of a shit, this would not be the version of Tenma I would want him to play. This Tenma is the most sympathetic one I've seen across any Tetsuwan Atom adaptation, period. Two characters, Hamig and President Stone, are doing double duty as this movie's antagonists, and they, in the process, absorb a lot of Tenma's worst attributes. Hamig, a twist villain, but like only if you're 8, is the one to enslave and sell Astro. He seems to be a stand-in for the circus ringleader from what I can tell. President Stone, more the main villain, absorbs most of the blame for Toby's death, at least in the eyes of the audience. The movie sets up Tenma as pretty neglectful, with the actions that lead to Toby being in the wrong place at the wrong time being done more or less to get his father's attention. One would assume that Tenma's guilt over the incident would become a major motivation for him, but that's only by way of subtext.
It's all my fault.
The sequence has President Stone bumbling around Tenma and Elephant's lab, loudly complaining about shit he clearly doesn't understand, and causing a very dangerous robot to go haywire, the very robot that would kill Toby. Rather than leaning into the difficult but interesting plot point of Tenma basically causing his only son's death, the audience is given an easy out through maybe one of the clumsiest written villains I've ever come across. On that note, this movie's political themes are maybe the clumsiest written I've ever come across. President Stone, yes, but also who cares? Tezuka wrote way more on the nose shit back in his day. Just look at fucking Hitlin. The fact that the Peacekeeper robot that goes haywire has the evil red core to Astro's good blue one is honestly just funny to me. I also don't really care. What I take issue with is the way that robots in this film are treated. And that's the one element that you kind of can't fuck up when adapting Atom. Astro himself is fine. Great. Even. A lot of the story focuses on him finding his place, his identity. The film is surprisingly careful in separating him from Toby. You never get the sense that this is Toby too. He feels like an entirely new character. This is impressive considering that Astro is given Toby's memories and is, in fact, under the impression that he is Toby for some time. There is one scene in particular that tosses that aside, depending on your interpretation. When Dr. Tenma first takes Astro home, seeing this as a second chance, he homeschools Astro, and it mostly goes disastrously wrong. Astro is a good student, but he's also going against pretty much all of Dr. Tenma's expectations, not doing what he feels like Toby would do, and why that is left pretty ambiguous. We get to know the original Toby a little, but not enough to know if Dr. Tenma is actually correct in his assessment here, whether Dr. Tenma didn't know his son as well as he thought he did, or whether Astro just really is his own person with his own preferences and quirks is left up to the audience to discern, and either answer is interesting in their own ways. Either Tenma lost a son that he was never able to truly understand, and he now has to deal with that, or Astro is truly 100% his own person, and Tenma has to deal with the fact that no matter how hard he tries, his son will never come back. Both interpretations are supported by the film. Tenma's neglect is pretty evident from the word go, and Astro's search for his own identity and purpose throughout the movie is a main theme, so it's my opinion that both are true at once. Of course, Astro figures out that he's a robot, at first elated by the discovery, and then absolutely crushed when...
And I don't want you anymore.
No.
But importantly, him being a robot is never a problem for him. It's always framed as a problem for everyone else. Astro likes who he is, but when who he is shines through a bit too much, he is subjected to rejection, abuse, and violence. 10 out of 10. No notes. They understood the assignment with him. Insert third cliche here. The issue comes when you meet the other robots, but to discuss them, I have to discuss the WALL-E style setting a bit more. The first and last sections of this film take place in Metro City, a city in the clouds, built because humans WALL-E the planet. We filled up the earth with garbage, destroyed the forests, and in response, a certain rich section of the population decided to just carve out a whole city and move it up a few thousand miles, all while the poors struggle and fight for their scraps. Among these poors are a very high volume of discarded robots, continuously dumped down to the surface at a pretty alarming rate. And technically, our sweet boy Astro is one of them now. As such, he's at first taken in by a little faction of them, a trio of bots that call themselves the Robot Revolutionary Front, or the RRF. They're very communist-coded, referring to each other as comrade and even having a Trotsky poster in the background. But if you can't tell from there...
You are now liberated. Go ahead, comrade. Take your first step as a free robot.
Everything. They are a joke. Literally, you're not meant to take them seriously whatsoever. The film depicts robots, especially the destruction or discarding robots, at best an environmental issue and at worst a punchline, where Tetsuwan Atom insists on granting all of them, regardless of how alien they look or act, a certain amount of humanity. Astro Boy 2009 seems exclusively interested in enforcing the humanity of Astro, the only true android in the film. The idea of someone from an enslaved underclass, someone viewed as uniquely disposable by their enslavers, wanting rights? Laughable, obviously. But Astro, he looks human, so you feel sad when he looks sad. So yeah, he probably deserves rights or something. Not that he would ever do something like ask for them, that would be silly. Now, Astro does have some amount of sympathy for robots. He likes the RRF guys. I'm just not convinced that the writers like them very much. And that's concerning because, again, this is the one aspect of Atom that you really can't fuck up. The one that Tezuka always insisted was central to the series. While I think, as a Western fan, it's easy to grasp onto the robots as an oppressed people's metaphor, there is something about it that is very Japanese. My understanding of Japanese philosophy, Buddhism, and Shintoism are pretty limited. But I do understand that animism, the idea that all things, even created objects, possess a kind of spirit, is pretty key to those belief systems. I would argue that from a Japanese lens, the idea that a robot, even a robot that doesn't look terribly human, can possess a type of humanity is not that much of a stretch. But I suspect that to us Americans, with our Christian-based philosophy that tends to work only in absolutes and hierarchies, that is a harder sell. It is a concept we can understand, yes, but I think there's a reason we weren't the ones to think of this idea first, with most of our depictions of robots up to this point being pretty explicitly negative. This is to say, it doesn't surprise me that the American writers lacked the imagination and empathy to make even the strange and silly robots equal to Astro in the way Tezuka often made them. But I am still disappointed. So yeah, this movie is a mixed bag, what can I say? I could take the time to comb through the plot, discuss the kind of love interest Cora who looks like she walked off the set of Hannah Montana, but I don't have much else interesting to say about these aspects aside from, yep, it do be a kind of average kids movie sometimes. It's a movie that is occasionally quite good, one that the studio probably didn't deserve to get bankrupted for, that requires you to wade through some mediocre bullshit to enjoy. If you, like me, have a high tolerance for such bullshit, then you will have a good time. If you don't, probably stick with 2003 if you can manage to get your hands on it. Well, that's kind of disappointing. Yeah? I wish I could give a more wholehearted recommendation, not just to this movie, but to any Tetsuwan Atom adaptation. I mean, is it so much to ask for an anime that actually understands Tezuka's political themes, that effectively humanizes the robots, has a version of Atom that's actually well written and sympathetic? A version of Tenma that's morally gray and complex, a tone that's not constantly shooting itself in the foot, a dub that's actually good, and it doesn't require a DVD or VPN in order to watch it as an American? Pluto, this is a video about Pluto now. If you came into this video as an actual Tetsuwan Atom fan, you've probably been screaming, just watch Pluto at your screen for like the last half hour. Pluto is not only the best entry in the Tetsuwan Atom franchise, it's maybe one of the best shows I've ever seen, and I'm not exaggerating. The only reason I don't recommend starting with it is that it assumes a certain level of knowledge about Tetsuwan Atom from its viewer, glossing over the history of its world and characters, as well as subverting certain expectations based on your knowledge of this franchise. If you are strapped for time, I don't think there's anything wrong with just diving right into Pluto. But your experience will be enhanced if you take the time to watch or read any of the previously mentioned entries first. Pluto was originally a manga made in 2003 by Naoki Urasawa, the same guy who made Monster. And if you're familiar with that work, you have suddenly just realized what you are in for here. It's a very loose adaptation of the Pluto storyline from the original Tetsuwan Atom manga, turning a fun boss rush into a slow and contemplative mystery thriller. It stars Detective Gaziked rather than Atom, and yes, he is called Atom, even in the English dub. It's about... well, okay, here's the thing. I kind of don't want to tell you about it. Even in telling you the bare premise, I tried to be a bit reticent with certain details because I genuinely think that this show is best when entered into completely blind. Like, even if you take the time to watch one of the anime as prep or read the manga, I think you should skip the Pluto sections. Because I know people don't pay attention to spoiler warnings, I refuse to discuss anything about the core mystery of this show in this video, and will stick to only discussing themes. But even then, I think you should watch Pluto before continuing. Leave a comment saying you'll be right back, and then come back to this point. Helpfully timestamped for your convenience, but still. Okay, you good? You back? Perfect. Pluto is basically What if we took all the political themes present in Tetsuwan Atom and gave them to a mangaka that actually knows how to write politics? Someone who will take the political struggles of robots, the idea of empathy towards people that do not look like you, of bigotry and classism, and even slavery, and polish those themes to a shine. What if there was a writer that tossed aside the racist Middle Eastern caricatures of the manga in exchange for a very topical plotline surrounding war crimes in Afghanistan, making direct parallels between the metaphor of Tetsuwan Atom and the very real atrocities we humans commit against each other, even to this day? What if there was a writer that could make this image the saddest, most chilling thing that you have ever laid your eyes on? That is what Pluto is. Pluto is what if Tetsuwan Atom was everything you knew it could be, and it alone makes getting into this franchise more than worthwhile. And yeah, that's basically all I'm willing to say on the matter. There were other shows clearly inspired by the Pluto manga, an adaptation of Dororo with a similar what if Tezuka manga but we take everything deadly seriously premise. And while also worth a watch, I like that show enough that I own a figure of it, it has an ending so shaky that it mostly went forgotten after it ended its run. Pluto remains in my mind. I continue to force my friends to watch and rewatch it, and they always have an amazing time with the show. The Power of Luck, who I bounced script ideas off of, wanted me to tell you that he was crying his eyes out by episode 3. It also helps that it's probably the most accessible of any entry we've spoken of here. The manga is still in print and looks beautiful. The anime is available to watch on Netflix, and the English dub is honestly so fantastic, I think I prefer it to the Japanese, with no American fuckery present.
Can you imagine how terrified the humans were when they found that out? That's why they keep me locked away down here, skewered and broken.
I admit, it's a bit funny to me that what basically amounts to an Atom fanfiction is by far the high point of this little list? This deranged rambling I'm choosing to call a YouTube video. It's the high point of this whatever it is, I mean, and that irony is not lost on me. But maybe that's an inevitability when looking at this franchise from a Western perspective. Tetsuwan Atom here in the West has an accessibility problem. And here is a show that not only is very accessible, but appeals specifically to modern adult weeb sensibilities. It is the one that came out after certain standards were codified, after the manga flipping era, and after 4Kids had long ago crashed and burned. You have to imagine an alternate universe where those 1960s American TV execs didn't find the idea of airing a show that remained culturally Japanese repellent, where they actually absorbed the lesson of the property they were trying to localize and allowed for something different to air on television for American children to enjoy. Tetsuwan Atom has an accessibility problem, but if you are watching this, presumably you have a computer and some free will, and perhaps even a little spark of curiosity. Yeah. If you didn't notice, this video didn't have, like, a big, important theme to it. No discussion on escapism or capitalism. Well, for the most part. I didn't even say the word misogyny once. What can I say? I wanted a smaller video to work on in between SAC anime and moving to a different state, or if not a smaller video, one in which hopefully the comments wouldn't give me a headache. Fingers crossed. Big Voltron video is on the horizon, and I'm sure I'll use all the fun buzzwords there, but there is something refreshing about just gushing about something I like for a little bit. No expectations, no pressure. Alternating, doing a one for you, one for me pattern with the video topics is what I'm going to do going forward, and on that note, I'd be down to accepting suggestions so long as it's within my wheelhouse. Heck, if you're a $5 patron and you want to abuse your Q&A slot to ask for something specific, well, I wouldn't be mad. On that note, the Power of Luck asks, is there a need to modernize Astro Boy to make it accessible to the West, or does it just need better distribution? Well, I think it's been modernized a few times. I think each adaptation is really just that era's take on Atom. A good dub or 3 wouldn't be out of place, but I genuinely think that distribution is like 90% of the battle here. Seychelles asks, would you ever make a Twisted Wonderland video? Games aren't really my yapping wheelhouse, so that's dependent on the anime adaptation, which I've liked a lot thus far. I foresee one, but give me a few years. Sachi Kuchiki asks, what music have you been listening to lately? You know what? I've been on a white girl music kick lately. Gwen Stefani, Kelly Clarkson, Natasha Bedingfield, stuff like that.